Well, welcome
Amy.
everyone to our adult ed presentation tonight on a myth. This is going to be so fun. First of all, the reason we have this presentation, we would like to thank Renee Steinberg, because Renee was the one that that actually recommended Laura Gold to us. And so thank you, Renee, for referring her to us. And like Seth said earlier in me, our committee was very interested in the myth of the Ellis Island name change. And I think many of us, including myself, have names that we thought were changed at Ellis Island. So we're all very interested. Laura Gold, I'm going to introduce her. She is the vice president of the Jewish Genealogy Society, a genealogical society of Los Angeles. And she's engaged in this type of research, gosh, since 1995, when she received her mother's family tree from her cousin. She was a former debater at Cal State Northridge, yay, another CSU school. And she qualified for the national debate tournament. She's now, well, she said she's retired from the Office of the Attorney General. Wow, that's pretty cool. But she's not retired because she's still giving these talks and educating us. She worked at the Office of the Attorney General as a trial lawyer, defending the state of California, which is pretty cool. And she's a skilled public speaker. She's made these presentations to different societies and to synagogues, Jewish women's organizations. She's done classes and she's led tours of Jewish LA. So it is my great pleasure, and all of the adult ed committee that is welcoming you, Laura, to give us your presentation. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you, Jill, and thank you, committee. A theme going through my presentation is the difference between a documented immigrant and an undocumented immigrant. And while there are exceptions, your ancestors, if they went through Ellis Island or any major port of entry, they were documented immigrants. They were legally entering this country, which means there is a paper trail that proves their entry, the name they entered on, and every change that they made of a name that was a legal change versus just using whatever name they chose on their own, which they could do. Years ago, people say, I want to be called Joe Schmo, and they can call themselves Joe Schmo. And it wasn't as, you know, they weren't getting driver's licenses and in New York and things like that. Maybe, well, not all of you can I see, but I assume that many of you have heard the Sean Ferguson joke, and it is indeed a joke. So I thought I'd tell you initially where that whole story came from. It's made up, and the source of it was in an article in a book called Every Family Has a Story. The article was written by Gary Mokotov, who is, you know, one of the leading experts in Jewish genealogy, probably the premier Jewish genealogist. He with somebody else invented the phonetic algorithm for matching Slavic and Yiddish surnames. So, I mean, he's really an expert. And here's the story. There was a Jewish man by the name of Samuel Ferguson, and he changed his last name in the United States to Ferguson. And his grandson, Tracy Ferguson, graduated Harvard Law School in the mid-1930s. And he was going around the country on speaking tours, raising money for a Jewish organization. And when his associates pointed out that his non-Jewish last name was kind of odd, he created this story to introduce his talks. And, you know, he said that his grandfather, Samuel Ferguson, when he arrived at Ellis Island, in a moment of panic, blurted out to the immigration officer, Shane Ferguson, which is, you know, what is your name? I forgot. And as you will learn from my talk, it was not necessary for anyone to tell the immigration officer what their name was. They were wearing a name tag on their clothing, and their name was on a manifest that the immigration officer was looking at. and matching up. But think about your own experience. If you've done any foreign travel and you've come through the United States, returning, and you go through passport control. And if you are not an American citizen, you go in a different line than the American citizens. And the people who are the immigrants, they have a passport and they have a visa to enter the United States. And can you imagine the passport control officer saying, that doesn't look like an American name. Let's change your name. If they're going through passport control, let's change your name. And you're now going to be called John Smith, a nice American name. Now, I'm not going to make a note of it. There's nothing that's going to be filed in the archive of the United States, but you're now known legally as John Smith. You'd say that's absolutely ridiculous. So think in the same way about the stories that your grandfather, grandmother, great aunt, great uncle tell about coming to Ellis Island. What they think of Ellis Island, or what they thought of Ellis Island, is different than what you think of it. You think of it as a place. And let me share my screen so that we can look at this place called Ellis Island. And here we are, this place of Ellis Island. They thought of Ellis Island as America. So when they said the name changed at Ellis Island, what they meant was the name changed in America, because to them, America and Ellis Island were synonymous. So I'm asking you to disregard what the family members said about the name change and listen to the real story. The first form on my slide is the US Declaration form. I apologize for it being out of focus, but I got it from the internet and I could not find another copy. Before immigrants came on the ship to the United States, they had to fill out a United States Declaration form. If they spoke Yiddish, this form was in Yiddish. If they spoke Russian, it was in Russian. If they spoke Italian, it was in Italian. And they filled it out, and it's very detailed, giving their name in full, where they are coming from, their age, all the information that eventually is going to be put on the manifest by the shipping company. Now, not every immigrant was literate. For those immigrants who could not read and write, there was an officer of the steamship company who spoke the language, asked them the questions, and wrote the information down on this form. The information, as I said, was taken from this form and it went into the manifest, and we will look at manifest. And by the way, you can order your ancestors' manifest from Ellis Island, and they come in their rather large documents. So it's really exciting when you order it and you get it. The potential passenger was required to sign a statement. And this is what the statement, and I'm quoting, "I hereby certify that I have made true answers to the questions which were asked in language understood by me, and which answers have been recorded in this declaration. Moreover," unquote, the form warned the immigrant that they, quote, "may be required to swear the truth of the following answers if it be called for by the Commissioner of Immigration at the port of arrival in the United States. A false oath will subject the passenger to fine or imprisonment." So I ask you, would these passengers risk fine and imprisonment by giving false information on a United States declaration? Not likely. The manifest is a legal document. Oh, well, we're not getting to the manifest yet. The manifest is a legal document. It will be retained in the National Archives. It will be consulted on all future immigration and naturalization matters. Hence, they had to swear that they would tell the truth. After World War I, the passengers had passports, but many countries, even before World War I, had passports. And what you are looking at here is not a passport. It is a birth registration for my uncle. This is a document in an archive in Odessa. And if you look, you can see a stamped date in 1913. This birth record was pulled from the files when the family was going to apply for their passport. This confirms and verifies this child's birth date, and the family traveled on a passport. So many people threw out their passports, but some families actually kept the passport. This is the passport photo. The youngest boy, who is kind of standing up with his hands in his pockets, that is my father-in-law. Their father had already emigrated, and the children who were still underage had a family passport with the mother and the three children. The older two brothers had their own passports. So families traveled on passports, and guess what? Their name was listed on the passport. They also had a medical inspection, and we all have heard about the medical inspections at Ellis Island, but they had a medical inspection even before they left. And they were given these inspection cards. The number 16 tells the page that this immigrant's name is on the manifest, so that the US immigration officer will have that page in front of him and can find the immigrant's name. And the number 28 on this form tells the line number on page 16 of the manifest. And you can see that this inspection document has the port of departure, the name of the ship, and the name of the immigrant. The man who posted this on the internet actually bought this on eBay, because some people saved these inspection cards. He had another one. This one she has the page number, page 5 of the ship manifest, and the line number 8. Here is my picture of Ellis Island. And because we're not in person, I can't see hands raised as to how many of you have since traveled to New York and gone to Ellis Island. And of course, it's a museum, and they have park rangers who tell you, and there are all kinds of exhibits. But this is what Ellis Island looked like when I first went there. It had been pretty much abandoned. The pipes, the water in the pipes froze. And then of course, when it thawed, the water went through the walls. My mother and I traveled in the fall after the tourist season. We had a park ranger to ourselves, and that was a fabulous experience because she told us about the immigrants who had returned to New York City and recounted to her the stories of their immigration experience. The immigrants had a name tag, and here you see 2 children, probably a brother and a sister, with their name tags. The name tag has the manifest sheet page and the name number where they're listed. These children, they're on page 3. And this is what the room looked like as the immigrants are going through. And if you look at all of these people, what do you see? You see their name tags pinned to their clothing. In fact, these name tags had instructions on the back as to how they could attach them to their clothing. And they are in line waiting to go see an immigration officer. The immigration officers had big desks with the manifest, and each line pretty much was set up so that all the people in that line were on that page that that immigration officer had. And then all the immigration officer had to do was match up the name to the line and confirm that that was the immigrant. The immigration officers were processing a lot of people. They didn't have time to say, you know, I've seen too many who have the same name. Your name is too complicated. It's spelled in an odd way. We're going to change it and then do some paperwork to keep track. Nor were they authorized, of course, to change anybody's name. They were just getting these people processed through as quickly as they could. And if you look on the ground, on the floor, you see the name tags that people ripped off and just dropped on the ground. They didn't need that anymore. Another one of the falsehoods that's propagated by people who don't really know is that the immigration officers didn't speak the language. Not true. A majority of the immigration officers were themselves immigrants. On average, they spoke 3 languages. Fiorello LaGuardia was an immigration officer. He spoke Yiddish, he spoke Italian, he spoke English. And if there was an issue about a language that the officer did not speak, there were translators there. People were not alone. There were organizations to help them through. And these immigration officers, spending day in and day out seeing all kinds of immigrants, were familiar with immigrant names. So the idea that they were unfamiliar with foreign names, unfamiliar with foreign languages, is bogus. And here I see that from 1892 to 1924, 1/3 of all immigrant inspectors were themselves foreign born. The official US service translators were available to help with the process. And as I said, immigrant aid societies with interpreters were at Ellis Island to help people. If there was a future need for proof of their arrival, this certificate would issue. It is a certificate of arrival. And we're going to be following this particular immigrant, Zezba Radomilska, and that number up in the right-hand corner keys into all of the citizenship papers that he is going to file. His declaration of citizenship, his application, his citizenship certificate. And this issued to prove that he entered under that name on that date on that ship. And these are all legal entries, documented immigrants. So the names that we're going to follow, the Radomilska, Radomzelski, and Radom. The difference between those names, Radomilska is the Polish version, Radomzelski, the Russian version, Radom is the changed name, the American version. Some of the towns where our ancestors were from were in Russia, were in Poland, and it was the same town, just a different date. After World War I, many Russian towns, Ukrainian towns close to the border became Poland, and Poland changed the Russian names to Polish names. So this family from Ukraine in the Russian Empire, after World War I, it was Poland, it's now Ukraine, and their name involuntarily was changed to Radomilska, the Polish version. Let's take a look at the manifest. As you see the top, there's the Radomilska family with Zezia, the mother, Zezba, the son 9 years old, and Ella, and here Ella 8 is put down as female. That is a mistake. Ella is a Polish first name, and the shipping company, when they prepared this, assumed that is a girl's name, but I can assure you it was a he, it was Al when he changed his name. Okay, if you go to the far right, you see Russia is crossed out and it says Polish, because they were then Polish, because after World War I, the town changed. And I have another family on the same page. You know, sometimes you want to look at all the people on a manifest because there may be other relatives. And initially I'm looking and I don't know that there's a relationship, but after doing research, I found out that there was. So we're going to also look at the STOUTLAND family with Laser, Esther, Moshe, Brocha, and another Moshe. But first we're going to track Zezba Radomilska. As I said before, the Polish version, the Russian version. Here is the certificate of arrival. You saw this before. Oh, I'm going to go back here. Bear with me here. My slides don't have an arrow, so I'm going to point here. You see this number that these people have? That is when they had their record checked, starting the citizenship process. And this is after the fact, the number is put down for their citizenship. So now we know that this manifest was pulled to confirm that they legally entered on the date that they said, under the name that they said, and it can be tracked. These people, it didn't get pulled. It's not always the case that the manifest has the number. My father's manifest does not, but in this case, it does have the number, and that is what the number represents. You know, when you do a lot of genealogy, you start learning the meaning of every aspect of a document, and you look at the details of documents. And here you can see the number up in the right-hand corner, and that is the number that connects this document to the manifest. Again, these are documented people. So here we have the declaration of intention. He wants to become a citizen. You can see he's using an American first name at this point, Lester. Radomilski, he's using that Russian last name, which is really the only last name that he had been using before coming to the United States. It shows on this document that he's from a town in Russia by the name of Narodich, which it's also known as Norodici, as again, Yiddish names, Russian names, Polish names, they're different names for the same town. He arrived November 7th, 1921. He entered as Radomilska Zezba, all connected up. And by the way, that is his picture. I knew him. This is my husband's uncle. Here he has, you know, the close-up of the typed information. Lester Radomilski has what he's doing for a living. He's from Narodich, and he signs his name. And this is subscribed and sworn to the clerk. He is swearing that this is his name. And here is his petition for naturalization. But the petition has to give his full, true, and correct name as Zezba Radomilska, because that was the name he entered legally into this country, even though it was not the name that he used. And on the bottom, he has, and it's a little, well, here, we'll just to use my arrow. Wherefore I petition for naturalization, pray that I may be admitted a citizen of the United States and that my name be changed to Lester Radom. And then he signs his name as the legal name on his entry from the manifest, but his new legal name is Lester Radom. And there you get the name change. did not happen at Ellis Island. And this gives the up close and personal picture. And there's, I forgot that I had done an up close where it says, I pray that I may be admitted as citizen as Lester Radom. But interestingly enough, finding him in the 1940 US Census, his father is Jake Radomilski, Lily is his mother, and he's Lester, the son, under that family name, because Jake has not changed his name. The 8-year-old girl, Ella, as you can see listed here, is Alex the son. And now they have a daughter born in the United States, Bertha. She was my mother-in-law. Russian version of the last name with the American first names that they were using. The children certainly going through school with American first names. So now we're back to that manifest, and we're going to take a look at the STOUTLAND family that's listed. And you will note on the right-hand side, they also have Russia and then Polish. So it's very similar. So now I'm tracking the wife mother, Zezia Radomilska, then Lily Radomzelski, because she was using the name Lily. And I asked these questions. What was her maiden name? And can she be connected with other family members? And there is her picture. This is what I knew before starting the investigation. I knew that her maiden name is Stone. I knew that her father's name is Eliezer Kite Stone. Her mother's name is Esther, and her brother's names Oscar, Herman, Max, Morris or Maurice, Leon, and Louis, spelled 2 ways, all named Stone. The question, was the last name originally Stone? Here is her father's death certificate, and it lists his name as Lazer Stone, son of Yehuda LEIB Stone. And by the way, well, it might be a little hard for you to read. They're from Narodich. And here is the mother's death certificate, Esther GUSHA Stone, daughter of LEIB STOUTLAND. You remember that Stouth, S-T-O-U-T-H, STOUTLAND family? Now here we have STOUTLAND. It's the same name. She's from Narodich. I know that it's the same person. This is my husband's great grandmother. And the informant is someone by the name of H. Stone, and that would be Herman Stone, one of the children. A little comment about spelling with STOUTLAND and STOUTLAND. Names are spelled as they heard them. These people spoke Yiddish. If they wrote, it would be a Yiddish, or if they were conversant in Russian, they would be writing in Cyrillic. So when they say the name, they're not spelling it in English. They don't know English yet. And it's however somebody else spells it and writes it down. And that's why in a family, you will have the same last name, pronounced the same way, spelled in different manners. So now we go back to the STOUTLAND. There's Lazer, there's Esther. Okay, same people, but the name is not Stone, it's STOUTLAND. So how do I match them all up? I took a look searching for one of the brothers, Jerry's grandmother's brother, Max. And here on his petition for citizenship, he wrote Max Stone, and then he crossed that out and he put down Mortuck Bar STOUTLAND, because that was their name in Europe. And then he has on this document his lawful entry under the name Moishe STOUTLAND. born in 1903. And the arrival date, that's the same arrival date as that manifest. And here he's changing his name to Max Stone. And here are witnesses, Hyman Kite. Remember, Esther's had Kite, or one of those death certificates, Kite is a family name. So you know that these are all family members. And here we've connected up with a family name, Hyman Kite. That's another family to look at. Now this is the court record, these index cards, and this was all on the internet. I was very fortunate that this family settled in Chicago. Getting records from Chicago, very easy. Ancestry.com and other of the internet sites have these records, and I just copied this from the internet. If your ancestors lived in New York, their privacy laws are draconian. I mean, they will do whatever they can not to allow you to see records or to have records scanned and posted. But fortunately, this family was from Chicago, and citizenship goes through the US District Court. So Mortock Barr, now Max Stone, became a citizen in the United States District Court of Chicago. We've got the same birth date, and his naturalization is 1935, and the name change was by order of the federal court from Mortock Barr, STOUTLAND, to Max Stone. Here's another petition for naturalization. This is Moishe. Now, I think that they were cousins because they're two Moishe Stoutlands. It is a petition by Moishe Stoutland because that's the name that he entered that was on the manifest. He's from Narodich, and at the bottom, he signs it with that name that was the legal name that he entered on. And here he says, "Wherefore I, your petitioner, pray that I may be admitted a citizen of the United States of America, and that my name be changed to," and then it says, "wants, Maurice Stone." So there's his name change, not at Ellis Island. Here's Maurice Stone, and my husband confirms that that is a picture of Maurice, since my husband knew him. And here's that certificate of arrival, connecting him up as a legal entry. The documents are here, preserved in the National Archive. This is the proof the name did not change at Ellis Island. Here's there were two Moishes, another Maurice. Here is another card demonstrating the name was changed to Maurice Stone. Here's the indication from the index card, changed by court order. This is Oscar Stone. He was my husband's grandmother's oldest brother. He came to the United States first, and here he has the name as Stateland, you know, Stoutland, Stateland. And when I had a researcher go back to that town of Narodich, oh my goodness, there were hundreds of Stoutlands. The families were huge, and you know, I have yet to figure out who all is related to who, but they are all that same family from that town. Here's Heim, Stoutland. He wants Herman Stone. I knew his daughters. In fact, his daughters had a jewelry store in the Northridge shopping center, but he wanted the name Stone. Well, to keep track of everybody, I put them all on a chart and I matched them up. I matched them to census records, the addresses, as who was living with who, and I'm not going to go through the details of it, but suffice it to say that I tracked the cousins, the brothers, and they all changed their name to Stone. So there's the Stoutland Stone name analysis. but my family did name changes too. And I was working off a handwritten family tree that my cousin put together. Now it's got some information, my printing, but for the most part, my cousin sat down with my aunt and got a lot of information. And as a result of this family tree, I found out that the family name in Europe, which is now Belarus, was not Silverman. Silverman was, I thought Silverman was the family name, and there's a lot of information here. So I'm going to use my pointer, and here is the name Silverman. And then it says that the name was Srebnik, S-R-E-B-N-I-K, Srebnik. So Srebnik was somehow changed to Silverman, but I assure you it didn't happen at Ellis Island. Well, how did they get Silverman from Srebnik? Shrebro means silver, Nick means man, and if you translate the name, Srebnik becomes Silverman. And that's why there are Jews who are named Black, but maybe some of their relatives are named Schwartz. Some people simply translated the name to what it is in English, and that is what happened in my family. The name Silverman came from the name Srebnik. Here is my father's record. This is not from the manifest. This is a typed, what they had on the website. And my father was named Laser Goldenberg. His residence before emigrating was in Odessa. He was 16 years old. This is all information that I know from him. So when I researched, I knew he came at 16. I knew he was from Odessa, and I knew that his name was originally Laser Goldenberg. You may note that my name is Laura Gold. So somewhere along the line, the name was changed, and his first name changed right away to Lewis. So he had went through the immigration process, and here is his certificate of citizenship. This is, I didn't have to get this online. He kept his certificate of citizenship, and it has his legal name now on his citizenship as Louis Goldenberg, and that is what he was voting on, that name. And I can confirm that the signature Louis Goldenberg, that was his signature. But he didn't always go by the name of Louis Goldenberg. And as you can see on this application for examination as a hairdresser and cosmetician, his name is Louis Gold. Well, wait a minute. His citizenship is Louis Goldenberg. His legal name is Louis Goldenberg, and he is now becoming a hairdresser. He took the exam and passed, and he was a licensed California state hairdresser under the name of Louis Gold. But as I say, people could use whatever names they wanted, and they did. Now, this is information from the Social Security application that some volunteer typed up, and it's got both names, Louis Gold and Louis Goldenberg. It has his birthplace, Shatava, Soviet Union. Well, of course, it was the Russian Empire at the time, and they have a typo where it says Shatavel, but that's a typo because, again, it's somebody typing up a record. But I know that this is my father because my grandparents' names are listed, Gershon Goldenberg and Bella Berezover. I think the Social Security application listed his name as of 1990, Louis Gold. But here is the state court order, or this is actually his petition for a name change in 1968. What happened was that my parents started traveling to Europe. And since my father's citizenship was Louis Goldenberg when he got a passport, well, that had to be the legal name that the federal government had. So he had a passport, Louis Goldenberg, and my mother, who was never Dorothy Goldenberg, that was, the attorney was, let me say, not the best. She had a passport that had to be her name on marriage, which was Dorothy S. Gold. And so they had Mr. Goldenberg and Mrs. Gold. When they returned, they got an attorney, did a petition to change the name, and he legally changed his name in the California Superior Court in the Santa Monica Court, and he became legally Louis Gold. But I found it amusing about people writing to the government, to hear the Secretary of State, because they have to deal with the name change. And I'm going to read the letter. I've got two of them, and they are absolutely hysterical. This one, August 27, 1915, no address, Secretary of State, Washington, D.C. Dear Sir, a client of ours by the name of Louis Diamond came to this country some 20 odd years ago and resided at that time with his brothers in Chicago, Illinois. These brothers, for some reason or other, had changed their names to Cohen, and our client, being then a minor, also adopted the name of Cohen. On the 8th day of October, 1900, he was given his final certificate of naturalization in the Circuit Court of Cook County, Illinois, under the name of Louis Cohen. He has since removed to New York City, and being known by all his friends and relatives as Louis Diamond, he discarded the name of Cohen and assumed his real true name. He cannot, however, vote on account of the facts as above stated, and is desirous of having his naturalization papers changed so that his real and correct name should appear therein. We would therefore thank you to kindly advise what, if anything, can be done in the matter, and thank you for an early reply. Signed by this Kosman and Kaplan, or they signed it Kaplan and Kosman. Well, he could have voted. All he needed to do is take his citizenship certificate when he registered to vote, and he could vote under the name that he had as a citizen, just like my father voted under Louis Goldenberg, even though he went by the name of Louis Gold. The other thing is, when he became a citizen, he could have made the correction and put on his citizenship the name that he wanted, that true name of Louis Diamond. But the federal government really has no responsibility here. This attorney should have done some research and filed a petition for name change before the New York court. Here is another letter. This is written by a counselor at law, Alfred A. Stein, in 1912. He writes to the Bureau of Naturalization, Washington, D.C., no address. Gentlemen, please let me know what you require to be the legal practice in a case of this kind. A man left the other side and for some reason of his own, traveled in coming over here under a different name. Then he reached this country, he resumed his correct name and declared his intention and secured his first papers under his correct name. He would now like to find out whether he can make out his application for naturalization papers in the proper form and not say anything with reference to his coming in under the other name, or whether you require him to file an affidavit at the time he files his second application stating the true facts. A prompt answer will be greatly obliged. Okay, well, some people did come under a different name. And as I say, whatever name that they swore to, and they filled out that initial form before they got on the ship, they could have put a different name, kind of like the Chinese traveled on paper names. That's a whole other topic. And, you know, when you do your declaration of intention and, you know, the application for citizenship, you put down the name that you came in on and the name that you want. You don't have to explain why you want to change your name. You simply came in under this name and you want to choose another name for whatever your reason is. And if this attorney had been a good attorney, he would have done some research and found out how to petition the state court for a name change instead of writing a letter to the Bureau of Naturalization in Washington, D.C. And I think I'm at the end of my slides. I've whipped on through this, and so we've got plenty of time to answer questions or hear your own stories about your family name change. And so I'm going to stop share. I don't see anything in the chat. So, if you want to unmute yourself and raise your hand and ask a question, I'm here to answer your questions about this or anything else you want to inquire about in genealogy.
Yes,
Or you're
please
too over, yeah, go ahead.
Please feel free, everyone, if you can either just unmute yourself or under the reactions thing, I think you can raise your hand, and please feel free to ask Laura.
All right, here's
any
a question.
questions. Yeah.
Why did some of the paperwork state Hebrew as the race? That was very common. In fact, when I went to Savannah, Georgia, the Jews came to Georgia, I think 3 months after Oglethorpe arrived and set up an English colony. And when they had all the land designated to families, well, the Jews weren't quite in the same category. So all the Christians have their names on their plots, and the Jewish plots all say Hebrew. That was the standard terminology for Jews. But that's an interesting question. Okay, Seth, go ahead, Seth. Your hand is raised.
Well, I had to remember to unmute first. I got interested in trying to figure out my family about 25 years ago or so. And I had a surviving aunt, and I asked her some questions, and she told me that our family was from a town in Russia, whatever Russia means, called Chotnesk. I asked some people and looked around and went to Shtetl Finder eventually and found there is no such place. And later on found my grandfather's manifest. He came in on the Mauritania in 1910. And